Hey, welcome back to another G.F.E. God, Family, and Everything Else podcast. My name is Kevin. Today, I want to go ahead and talk with you, honestly, no filters, no hypes, just about something that doesn't get discussed enough, especially in the fitness world. As you know, I am someone that really enjoys fitness. But today's topic, what I want to go ahead and talk to you guys about, is when a good thing quietly becomes an idol. And I'm sure many of people have been seeing that. You can see that all over social media platforms today, Instagram. You can see it on Facebook. You see it on YouTube, wherever, Pinterest, whatever. Right? You're seeing a lot of fitness photos of men, women lifting, in their no shirts competitions, whatever. Right? And that's something that's fun to look at. But then it can also be dangerous, especially if you are a student of fitness. So I just want to go ahead and get started. First, I just want to say again, as you know, that I really enjoy and I love fitness. I'm thankful that God has given me the ability, the discipline, and the opportunity to strengthen the body He has blessed me with. So let me just make one thing clear. What I just said, right? I said the body He has blessed me with. This is not my body at all, it's His body. And my job is to honor and glorify God with it. I've been a student of fitness for, I would say, over 15 years. I'll say even longer than that, going all the way back to high school. Back when I played football, I enjoyed fitness. I enjoyed hitting the weights. I didn't take it as seriously as I should have, but years later, I stepped into my first men's physique competition. I'm fast forwarding quite a bit. I'm not going to go piece by piece, but I fast forward after high school and then everything after I met my wife. Uh, my first men's physique competition, and that's when things really kind of took off for me. I changed how I ate. I changed how I trained. I studied more and more about fitness. Now, granted, my first competition, I wasn't sure what I was doing. I just kind of figured that I would just eat less and do a lot of cardio. Right. I still was kind of eating some of the things that I wanted, but I did clean it up a bit just because some of the videos that I've seen on YouTube, you know, so I kind of just mimicked that. But I had my first competition and I did pretty well. I got first place, but that's not the point, right? It was a lot of fun. I met a lot of people, and it was in a church, which was great. And run by two people that are Christian that pretty much want to promote bodybuilding, but making it Christ centered, if that makes sense. Now, did I know about all this? No, I didn't. I was introduced about this competition from a girl that I ran into, that I knew at my gym because she was into fitness as well. I caught her in the mirror in like the dance room area. She was in the mirror. She was in a bikini and she was doing a lot of poses. And I thought to myself, I was like, what is she doing? And so I just decided to ask her when I was checking out at the desk because she worked at the gym. I asked her like, what exactly are you doing? And then she told me that she was in competition. She was in the bikini contest, and we got to talking a little bit. And then she actually said to me, she was like, you know what? You're always here in the gym, and I see you working out pretty hard. You should give it a look. You should take a look at it and maybe consider it. So I said to myself, yeah, I'll take a look. So I decided to join the competition, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. I met a lot of people. It was a great experience, and like I said, that's when things changed. And if we're being honest, like honestly, it became addictive. Um, it, how do I say it became toxic, but without me realizing it. It was just kind of like a snowball effect, to be honest. Um, I wanted to do my next competition. I was so happy. I thought to myself, let's just keep going. This was a lot of fun. And then I started to do more research and I started learning a little bit more and on how like to perform certain movements. I learned about hypertrophy. I learned about lifting heavy, all of that, right? And I was ready, and I was pretty shocked about how my physique changed when I was just a little bit more disciplined than with my eating and all that. And you'd be amazed, as they call it, newbie gains. but but the problem was is that my eyes were constantly on the scale. They were constantly on the mirror, and I was always in the gym. I was in the gym in the morning and the gym again in the afternoon when I would get off from work. I had a goal. I set a goal to myself, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to become a natural IFBB pro. I said this to my wife a few times. I was like, you know what? Because I don't take PEDs, I don't take drugs or anything like that. I'm just protein and creatine. And creatine's not a bad thing. You can find creatine in foods. Just I wasn't eating enough meat, so nothing's wrong with taking the extra supplement. But you know, uh, at that same time, I was still going to church, and while my family and I still went to church on Sundays, I'd have Bible study sometimes. But here was the problem that I didn't realize until later. My heart wasn't with the Lord. I tricked myself and myself, excuse me, I can't speak, made myself thinking that I was actually following God. I was doing his will. I was, you know, trying to justify the things that I was doing, but I wasn't walking in fellowship with him at all. Fitness didn't replace church, but it did replace God's position in my heart. And as you guys already know, and with this podcast, I call it G.F.E, God, family, and everything else. And I truly mean that, to be honest. But at that time, I didn't. I didn't have that mindset. I thought I did, but the older I became, and I'm thankful that God continues to bless me, I started to learn more about and what is more required. Um, so, but let me go ahead and tell you some things. What things to watch out for when it comes to following your passion, and how things can actually potentially become an idol. So let me just give you a few warning signs. This isn't going to be everything, but these are some things that I wanted to share with you, and I'm sure you can go ahead and research and do a little bit more for yourself. But let me just go ahead and give you some things. But you do know when something is leading you away from God, when a passion becomes demand, ultimate loyalty, time, and emotional energy, things that belong to God alone. And let me say that one more time, all right? So a passion begins to demand ultimate loyalty, time, and emotional energy, things that belong to God alone. So if you find yourself that you're putting all your faith and your time and your energy into that passion, and I'm saying nothing's wrong with having a passion, but if you, like I said early, replace God's position with that passion, then that's when you start to turn that joy that you had into an idol. You all you consistently neglect prayer, Bible study, or fellowship because your passion needs that time. Again, you're placing God second or third or just last completely because you have a goal that you must hit. You become irritated or angry when your routine is interrupted by family, your church, or obedience to God. I in that one, I can honestly say that that's happened to me a few times when I'm at the gym. I have a set menu in my mind that I follow, and then when I finish what I have set for myself for the day, then I feel like, okay, I'm done, I'm ready to come home. But there has been some times where I'm on the treadmill because I try to hit the treadmill about 40-45 minutes, sometimes an hour. Mostly I would say before it was an hour. Now I've kind of dialed it down a little bit, so about 45-50 minutes a day. And so I remember there was a time where I got on the treadmill, and about 20 minutes in, right, I get a message from my wife, and then she's asking me, and I knew when that message came, like ding, like I'm like, oh, here we go. And then so she's like, so when are you coming home? And I'm like, why? And then she asked for me to, I believe it was to take my son to basketball or something like that. Um, And so, from my understanding, that he wasn't going, but then I guess he changed his mind, and then my wife, she couldn't do it because I think she was working. I can't remember entirely, but it was something like that. And I immediately became irritated, right? Because I looked at the time and I was like, I'm only 20 minutes into this, and I just really want to hit it. So I turned off the machine, I got off, and I ended up getting dressed, and I went home, and I was irritated because I wanted to finish my last 25 minutes that I set for myself. And so I was irritable, which wasn't right in my mind, and it's not right, period, honestly, because I was putting the gym before my family and not even understanding that family comes first. And like I said, God comes first, and everything else is second. So I've been working on that, and then asking the Lord for guidance, wisdom, and the patience that I need to understand that He's blessed me with fitness. He can take it away anytime, and then I have nothing to say, really, nothing to say at all, except for He knows what He's doing, and I have nothing to say about it. But another sign that you could realize that something is going wrong is when your emotions rise and fall entirely on performance. Success brings extreme highs, failure brings deep despair. That's not discipline anymore. It's turned into idolatry. There were days where y'all like, oh, I did great in the gym, right? But then there's also days where, you have a bad day in the gym and you feel like you're weaker than you were before, and you're upset. Or even when you take an unscheduled day off, you're in like a bad mood because you weren't able to hit the gym. Yeah, everything that I'm saying, I've been there. But again, thanks be to the Lord that He has continued to bless me waking up every single day to pursue Him and to open up my eyes and my heart and understanding what's more important. And before He calls me home, this is something where I am thankful that God has blessed me this opportunity. Am I perfect at it? No, but I believe that I am moving in the right direction than I was before. I pray that I am better than I was yesterday than I am today. And funny story, I remember so my oldest son, he really loves basketball, and so he was playing at the park one night, and then he ended up coming home, and he looked like he was like really upset, like on the verge of in tears, right? And then it was a little frustrating on my end because I was like, what's wrong? And it was hard for him to get the words out, and I was like, my patience was pretty short, just because I just wanted him to tell me what it was. And so he finally told me that he was upset because he felt like he was missing every single shot that he was taking. And he was very, very upset about that. And rightfully, I mean, I understand, when you have off days and then you're just kind of figuring out like what's going on. I've had those times whenever I play basketball, when I play football, it doesn't matter. There will be off days. And so that was something that I tried to explain to him. And I said not everyone's going to be on their game. It's consistency that matters. Jordan, he's had off days. Michael Jordan, the greats out there have had off days. Why? Because we're human. But like I said, that's not discipline anymore. It turns into idolatry, and that's when you start realizing you're about to go down a dangerous road. But enough what I was saying. Let's see what the ultimate source, the ultimate authority giver, has to say about it. And so the ultimate authority is the scriptures, the Bible, God's word. And I'm going to share with you some of the things that He says, right, that can remind us and help us. In Exodus 23, it says, you shall have no other gods before me. Fact. He was talking to Moses on Mount Sinai, and then he was giving him the law. No other gods before Him. God's a jealous God, rightfully so. He's created us. Why are we trying to place Him second and push Him aside and think that we know it all? We don't. We don't. So no other gods before Him. That means do not place as I was saying earlier, your ultimate loyalty, time, and emotional energy. That belongs to God. Matthew 22:37 says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. How do you do that? How do you do that? I understand there's some things in here where it says it's easier said than done, because yes, we are human. We will fail. We will fall at times. But how do you do that? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, soul, and mind. That means giving God praise every single day, spending time with the Lord, staying in prayer. And when things go sour, come to Him first. Nothing secular. Go to Scripture. Matthew 6:24 says you cannot serve both God and money. It's true. Like a lot of people, then I honestly, I say this, like, of course, we need money to survive. Money is great to have whenever you want to spend it with your family or your loved ones, or even some of the things you want to enjoy. Nothing's wrong with money, but when you turn it into something it shouldn't, that's when it becomes an idol. I'm a person that's not motivated by money at all. Yes, I pray that the Lord helps us financially, but I'm not seeking to be rich. I'm not seeking for that at all. The thing that I desire the most is having a personal relationship with the Lord and my family as well. My family has that relationship with God, that God becomes the main center point of this family and the foundation that we all fall on. That is my desire. That is something that I seek. Yes, I have goals. I wouldn't even call it a side business, but it's like a side activity where it's a volunteer where people end up coming and then I teach fitness. But if I really truly wanted to just focus on trying to make money out of it, then it would be something I would put all my heart, mind, and soul into it, which is dangerous, and I should not be doing that. Let's keep going with what God says. In Luke 12:15, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. This world is very enticing. It tells you all over in social media, you want to look like this, you want to look like this, you want to be like this type of lifestyle, you want to live this type of way. But they fail to tell you, though, that if you pursue that, that will definitely damage your relationship with either your loved ones or your job, more importantly, with God. Because you choose to dive in and try to take what the world tries to tell you. You know you want this. You know you want this. But greed will lead to a fall. At the short term, it seems beautiful, but it will lead to a fall. 1 Corinthians 10:23, it says, I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. It's true. God has given us free will. We can do anything that we want. We can, right? God's not going to force himself into our life. He's not. But not everything is beneficial. It's true. So we may be seeing like living our last life. What's that word? YOLO. You only live once. No, that's not true. Those are the people that only just focus on this life. But they forget to remember that there's an eternal life waiting for us. And that's either where we want to be based off our choices, based off our free will. Do we choose to be with the Lord or do we choose to be apart from him? And let me tell you this, the great thing about God is that he constantly reminds us to choose him because he wants to be with us for all eternity. He encourages us in his word. Why do you think what I'm reading? This is wisdom that God is trying to tell us on what we need to watch out for and what we need to pursue. Him through all this means he needs to be first. God makes it very clear he will not share the throne of your heart. So here's the truth. Many of us don't like to hear. When we push God to the side and chase our passions first, it might look like success in the short term, but in the long term, eternity will fall. Why? Because we've separated ourselves from the source of life. Apart from him, everything eventually collapses. So we need to have a good balance, not abandonment. There is nothing wrong with fitness. There is nothing wrong with goals. There is nothing wrong with passion. The problem is our priority. God doesn't ask us to quit everything. He asks us to put him first in everything. 1 Corinthians 10:31. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. How do I do that? Train for the God's glory. Work for God's glory. Build for God's glory. Not for ego, not for identity, and not for approval. So I want to just make it clear again. If God were to remove the thing you love most today, would you still worship him? Ask yourself that. that question changed everything for me. So I want to encourage you. I want you guys to really listen to what I say. Let's not turn blessings into idols. Let's return them back to God where they belong. So I just want to thank you guys again for listening to G.F.E, God, Family, and Everything Else podcast. I will catch you guys in the next episode. God bless. Peace.